start yet? Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. We'll call the meeting to order. I would like to have an approval of the minutes from October 1st, please. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to introduce Shelley Johnson. I'm sorry that we made you wait so long.
Oh, that's okay, it's Friday.
But
If I wasn't here, I'd be on a call getting my blood pressure, I would go, sir, so.
no. I asked Shelley to come down today, because there's 2 or 3 issues that I'd like to talk with her about and get some input from her. The first issue, do you know everybody, Shelley?
I think I know most everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, the rest, everybody I recognize, we're good.
The first thing that I want to talk, I'll just tell you what I want to talk about. Okay? You can take it in any order you want. We had some discussion with you, Glenn, and Tina, and myself about possibility of consolidating code enforcement into the county and overseen by the department. I wanted to see if we could have a discussion on that and see where that stands. And so the other thing is I ran into a situation, and I believe it's down in the Hudson Valley, where they are, at least one town, or maybe a whole county, is using their zoning ordinance to provide a tax incentive similar to the pilot agreements that we do for individuals that build new homes.
Okay.
And I'm very interested in seeing if we can use the wording and the agreements that we have and the procedures that we have in place for the pilot program to work with something like that. I think it could be a good idea. And the third thing is I wanted an update from you on the land acquisition and the study that was just recently completed.
Okay,
So take it away.
it doesn't matter what order, okay?
No.
Let's start with the top, county code enforcement. So we did meet with Tina about county code enforcement. It's actually something that I've been advocating for about 18 years. I think that doing code enforcement regionally makes more sense, especially in a rural county where our towns can't afford full-time professional code enforcement in the municipal level. And I'm running into some of the same challenges that I've run into for the last 18 years, and the ability to convince communities is the right thing to do. So when you look at town and village budgets, and I've polled a bunch of supervisors to find out what they pay, most of the towns are paying anywhere from $15,000 to $18,000 a year for code enforcement services. Some of them pay a little bit more, some of them pay substantially less. I think there's one town that pays only about $8,000 a year. So that really limits how much they actually pay out. So when I look at doing code enforcement, I spoke to the state codes office. The state's codes office said that if you went to a regional code enforcement, their recommendation would be that any individual code officer should not do more than 5 towns in order to do them effectively. With the county, there are 30 municipalities in the county. So if every municipality was involved, we'd need at least 6 code officers. Now you're talking about a county department, you're going to need probably at least 1 administrator. So you're talking about a 7-person department, which is currently a 1-person department. And when you add in contractual costs and you add in, say you pay $40,000 or $50,000 a year to each of these people, and then you add benefits, that's $100,000 per person. You got, $650,000, $700,000 just in staff at the county level. Then when you add in office space, contractual costs, you're probably looking at about $1 million a year for that one department. Then when you add in trainings that they're all required to have, it's probably more than $1 million that the county would have to fund a county code enforcement department to serve all 30 municipalities. Well, when you put the current budgets of $15,000 to $18,000 a year times the 29 municipalities, because the county obviously wouldn't pay the fee since they're paying for the department, you're really only going to get $450,000 to $480,000 in revenue that way to cover this $1 million plus department. Then you get into the debate. So one of the supervisors I was surveying said, so that's okay, because we'll just give you the $15,000 that we budget every year and we'll let the county pay for it. And then we've got full-time code enforcement. I said, okay, but then they want to keep their building permit fees to defray that cost because they've always used those building permit fees to defray that cost. So when I talk to my committee, they're saying, well, wait a second, the county's doing all the work, the county should get the building permit fees to defray the county's costs. But the municipalities are unwilling to give up those permit fees because that's what they use now to defray the $15,000 they put towards code enforcement. They don't want that to change. So there's some logistics there about financing it, funding it, and getting communities to tie in. Come the next 2 years, we will have at least 10 municipalities that will not have code enforcement. Because we've got 2 key code officers retiring who do multiple towns. So we'll have a few towns, a good large chunk of our towns that actually will need code enforcement. We have a few that have new code officers that they're quite happy with, as they say, and they wouldn't be willing to join a program. I don't know how the county would feel about taking on the cost of a program like this if there aren't enough communities to tie in. So I called the state and said, is there a way the county can make it so that it's a county program and kind of takes that over from the towns? And they said it would have to be a voluntary program or a home rule state. The municipalities would have to volunteer to be part of the program, much like our TPAS program. And if a community gets upset with the county, they can drop that contract at any time, go back doing their own code enforcement, but of course we also lose that revenue for that town that is being used to cover the cost of that department. So I think from our perspective at the county, at least from Dale and my perspective, is that one of the biggest hurdles is convincing the county that this is money well spent to even create a department, because obviously the county is going to have to absorb at least half the cost of it, if not more. Because there's no way the municipalities are going to be able to afford to participate if it's 100% funded through the towns. Because you'd have to charge so much to the towns, which is why they don't have full-time code enforcement now. They can't afford to pay benefits. It's not really the cost of the person per hour, it's when you add on the insurance and you add in all of the benefits, it about doubles the cost. I see Andy shaking his head because you're a municipal leader, you know the challenge that Village City has had. There's also the issue with zoning. So 7 out of 19 towns have zoning, but most of our villages have zoning. Zoning is one of those things that is home rule and it's local and it's supposed to be locally administered. So if a municipality has zoning, the Department of State is doing some research for me. They don't know that the county could actually do zoning enforcement, that it may still have to be done at the local level. So now you may have a municipality that's paying the county for building permit and codes enforcement, but some of their land use codes, like zoning and subdivision, they have to hire a person locally to do zoning enforcement. So now they're paying 2 people and increasing their budget even more. And we want to take the building permit fees away from them that actually helps absorb some of that. So the sale becomes more complicated. I'm not saying these hurdles can't be overcome. They're definitely challenges. And I think it's something that maybe you guys could even help us with. One, can you envision a way to structure this so that it is financially beneficial to all to make it work? And 2, whatever influence you have in your communities, is there a way you could work within your own communities to convince them that doing code enforcement this way is more beneficial? Now, I think how we would structure it is similar to the TPAS program. It would be a contractual relationship from the towns back to the county. So there's some nuances in code enforcement. Technically, your code enforcement officer is supposed to live in your municipality. You have to pass a local law that overrides that state law in order for you to hire a code enforcement officer that actually doesn't live within your municipality. So all the communities have to make sure they have done that in order to even defer back to the county. And then the county would have to assign code officers to each town. How I would envision it, if they're doing 5 towns apiece, they'd have 1 day of office hours in each of their 5 municipalities. So they'd still have to have a housing at the town hall or the village hall somewhere where the code officer can be, because you're gonna get complaints from your local people. Why do I have to drive to Delhi to get a building permit? I live in Hancock. I wanna drive to the Hancock Town Hall and get a building permit, like I always have. So you're gonna get pushback from your constituents if you don't at least have 1 day of office hours in each municipality. So we're gonna have to have some sort of contractual relationship that allows for a county employee to actually have an office space 1 day a week at least within the municipality so that they can actually service that municipality. It also depends on how much service the community needs. Now, villages where you have a lot of development, you have a lot of multifamily homes, you have a lot of businesses, that code officer not only is issuing building permits, they're supposed to also be doing a lot of fire inspections. Fire inspections are a big part of the code officer's job when you have a lot of development, especially in villages. Towns, not so much. They don't have usually as many houses and businesses, but village main streets, and if you ask any village, most of them will tell you how often your fire inspections get done. They're not getting done as when they should be. Your multifamily homes are not being inspected the way they should be, and they tend to be some of the biggest code violators. So then there becomes the issue, if it's a county office and a municipality isn't kind of holding their feet to the ground saying, yeah, we want you to go ahead and enforce those codes issues on those multifamily homes, who's the liability going to? Which is the question I got from Amy Merklin as soon as I discussed this with her. Are we really taking on the liability for multifamily homes and fire inspections in the municipalities? That's theirs right now. So we definitely got some hurdles. Our former insurance man might be able to help us with that one, because that's definitely an issue. When I spoke to Dale said one of the, it can be a benefit and can be a challenge, is code officers can have multiple licenses. So like some code enforcement officers are licensed to do fire inspections, some aren't. Some code officers are licensed to do asbestos inspections and some aren't. Some of them are certified floodplain managers, some of them aren't. So you could actually spread that out amongst a staff of 6 and then have that resource available to every community, because now you do have a certified floodplain manager in the codes office. You do have a certified person to do state fire inspections. You do have an asbestos inspector for demolitions, house renovations, that type of thing. But that's also an added cost, because all of those certifications come with mandates and requirements for training every year, and there's a cost associated with all of those. So then again, how do you cover those costs unless you enhance the budget to cover those costs? Now it costs more for the county to run that department. And how do we cover that cost? So it's snowballing, I guess, to say the least. I'm doing a ton of research. There are counties that I've reached out. So every 2 weeks, the county planning directors in the 62 counties in the state, we have a conference call. And I put a question out to all of them, how many counties actually do county code enforcement? There aren't many, there are a few. And most of them have said their biggest challenge is that because it has to be voluntarily brought into, as soon as a municipality gets in a pissing match with the county, they drop that contract. And then the town is trying to do it again themselves, generally with somebody that's not licensed, not certified. Then you get into liability issues as well. Was the county the code officer at the time, or was the town the code officer at the time of the violation? And who dropped the ball? And they said that's one of the biggest challenges they have, is this in and out of the program thing, because communities get mad, they have a new supervisor or a new mayor. We have the same issue with our TPAS program, where you get a new supervisor, decides the county shouldn't have anything to do with the town, they drop their TPAS contract, and 4 years later, they're coming to us saying, we need a contract to clean up the mess of the last 4 years. So there are definitely going to be challenges to it. I still think it's a good idea. I still think it's worth doing. One of the things I talked to Dale about briefly doing is maybe we start with doing floodplain management at the county level, because that's a certification that's harder to get. It's something only about 2 code officers in the county have now. If we did floodplain development permits at the county level, it's something maybe Dale's office could take on with no additional staff, because I have a CFM in my office that can help with that. Dale's retiring next year or the year after, he's not exactly sure when. That's when they would look to roll the department over. Now, I don't know that it would become part of the planning department. My committee believes it should still be its own department, but under that committee. So we're answering to the same committee. And then the question becomes, where do we house them? Because there wouldn't be room in our new building, and there isn't going to be room where they are at public safety now. I think they've got a closet for Dale at the moment. So putting any additional staff in there would be a problem. So housing would certainly become an issue to expand it. Definitely things we should talk about now, though, so that we're not dealing with that when Dale retires and then say, hey, we want to hire 5 more code officers and we're going to create a department. Oh, wait, where do we house it? Now we got to buy a new building, because we can't take any more buildings off Main Street in Delhi at this
We're
point.
building a new building that's not big enough already.
Dale, Bruce, it's barely big enough for my department to fit in there with DPW, because it's on the smallest lot in Delhi.
The jail is empty.
Yeah,
The building next door is for sale.
I know, we had that conversation.
Do you have to have essential housing if these enforcement officers are gonna have, 5 days in the town
That's a good
calls?
question. Maybe not. You would at least have to have central housing for at least one person and the admin to run the program.
Right.
But
So you may not need 7 desk spaces, but I think you would at least need some rotational spaces for people to sit at.
right, you're gonna need space because they're gonna bring all their paperwork back from
Yeah.
Hancock and bring it here, because if someone calls them tomorrow and they say, well, it's all in Hancock, and I'm not probably all the way back there, answer a question on your permit or something.
Shelley, I'd like to have some more discussions with you later on this. I think it's
Yeah.
a critical issue. But one thought that I want to bring up right now is that a lot of these towns, you say, some of them are getting away with paying $8,000 a year.
Yeah, there's at least one town that only pays about $8,000 a year.
And I would submit that they're getting what they pay for.
I would tell you their code officer is not certified. Which means how many building permits are legal under that code officer. But you get what you pay for, just like we said.
If the towns are, so many of the towns are going to lose their code enforcement officer, and that's happening already.
Yep.
What are they gonna do? They're gonna go out and hire somebody at today's salary, that $8,000 is gonna become 15 or 20, and it's a snowball. Number two, this whole thing is the cost of code enforcement is gonna seem cheap by comparison when somebody burns to death in one of these rental properties.
Yeah.
Where people from out of the town, out of the county are coming up here for a weekend and they're staying in some godforsaken home in the backwoods.
All these
And-
Airbnbs with no
And
inspections
it burns to
whatsoever.
the ground with
Yeah.
no inspections ever. And, a village, I forgot its name, but a village has already been sued for not properly inspecting a building that had a large party where the roof collapsed on the porch.
Sure, absolutely.
And they collected a healthy sum from the town through insurance, of course, but that goes back to.
And that's not unique to Delaware County. There are
No,
cases in all
but-
counties where,
But
a house burnt down and someone got hurt and the town became liable because they didn't do a fire inspection, or the fire department couldn't get up the front steps because they collapsed because they weren't built to code.
So I think it's really malpractice on the part of the elected officials to look at code enforcement as a dollar amount on the budget and nothing else.
Which is unfortunately, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Andy, but you are a municipal leader. Sometimes it's not just the supervisor or the mayor that we have direct contact with. It's convincing those other board members
So I know.
that this added cost is necessary. And I don't know if you experienced that, but I know the town of Sydney had that challenge when Dale left. They had to almost double what they pay for code enforcement just to get someone in, and they've been through, 4 code officers since? Because they can't even keep a code enforcement officer.
Well, we're losing our code officer effective January 1st.
Yeah, see,
And he works part-time for us, so he probably puts in 20 to 25 hours a week. You don't have time to do fire inspections. I mean,
and we had a conversation with Sydney in particular because both the town and village, after Carl died, needed code enforcement.
Right.
And we had a conversation about seeing if you could do it together, do a shared service between the town and the village and have one code official so you could afford a full-time person.
Right.
And that fell through just between a town and a village not being able to come to an agreement about what that would look like. So now we get 29 municipalities and the county. It's a big undertaking. I certainly don't think it's impossible. I think it is possible. I think it's something we can do. I bring up these challenges so you can know these are the hurdles, these are the checks that we have to get through to convince not just the 19 supervisors and 10 mayors, but their boards
And
to
that's,
put that additional money into their budgets to actually make this affordable for anyone to do. And some supervisors have told me point blank, I'm happy with my code officer, so why would I join it? Okay.
Until they get sued.
Or until that code officer retires, like Steve Dutcher just retired in Walton, and you're just hanging, both communities are just hanging at this
Well,
point.
the town, he's still working for the town till the end of the year, but the village he's done, but
Right,
he works for both of them, so he was putting 40 hours a week. in.
right.
So what are they doing? Having the clerk issue the building permits?
Oh, I don't know if anybody, no, they call Dale. I
Dale
think.
covers them as the county code officer when they don't
Yes.
have a code enforcement officer.
Right, they call Dale and they have to go through the county to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I tried to make our code enforcement officer a full-time position when we had Bob
Yeah.
Root there, which was very good, and the board fought me.
You
and fought me
couldn't,
and
you
fought
couldn't
me.
convince the
And
other
I
four
could
board
not
members.
convince them.
Yep.
And
And that was something as simple as they didn't want to pay for his benefits, right?
right.
It wasn't that they didn't care about paying him 40 hours. They cared about paying for his retirement and health insurance. Because it is expensive, it's a cost. You have to figure if you're paying $40,000, you better count on 90,000 by the time you add in the benefits. That's
Yeah,
just
but-
what you budget for.
Do you charge for fire inspections?
Do we charge for what?
Fire inspections?
We do.
Yeah, and the village of
We do.
Malta, yeah, I think it was $40 for them to walk through the front door and go out the back door.
Well, and that's the other thing that Dale said, if it went to the county level and the county was collecting the permit fees have to be restructured because none of the towns charge enough
Well,
for
they're
building permits or for fire inspections or
they're all
anything else.
different.
That they all
But
have to
people will
be,
pay for that because they'd rather
well, yeah,
pass inspection than be sued
yeah.
if somebody got hurt in their property, so
Yep.
they pay for it.
But unfortunately, even with like, planning board fees, $10 to do a boundary line adjustment review, and people balk at that. Yet, when you go to other counties, you're paying $100 just to do a sketch plan with no guarantee of approval for any kind of review. But to get the towns and the villages and their whole board to vote to agree to those increases, they're so afraid it's gonna drive people from doing anything in their community, they won't change them. Right, we had this battle in Hancock, just to get the town of Hancock to go up to $25 for a subdivision application fee, because it was 10 for so long. I mean, you pay your planning board members $30 a month to come to the meeting, and you're only charging $25 or $10 for an application. At least charge 25.
Right, especially in a subdivision, the person's gonna make.
When he sells the lots, build it into the cost of the lot.
It's right, he's gonna make money off the subdivision, so.
I think it's worth looking at, but I think it's gonna be extremely challenging.
But I do, if any of you have any ideas or input as to how we can put a package together that's sellable, not just to the 19 supervisors to build the department, but to all of the boards in the towns and villages to convince their boards to participate. I think the participation is gonna be the key. If the county creates the department and only 5 towns participate, there's not gonna be worth it for the county to create $1 million department.
I'll be down. I have lots of ideas.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Sean.
Sure. So what's next? That's
Next.
county code enforcement.
Yeah, using zoning as a.
As an incentive. So incentivized zoning is something that they do a lot of times in more urban-based areas. It's not really done here. Most of our villages have zoning outside of the village of Franklin. Only 7 of our 19 towns have zoning. So using as an incentive in most of our towns wouldn't really work because they just don't have zoning. So you don't really have that incentivization piece. I'd love to see the language that you saw to see how it could be incorporated. Because we could certainly look at doing that. And I don't think it's terrible that it's not in the towns, because most of your development and potential for future development and growth is in villages anyway, villages and hamlet areas. Because that's where your sewer and water hookups are, that's where your, business districts are, that's where the zoning kind of pushes business, so.
It sounds like, go ahead, Bruce.
Well, for example, residential, if you gave an incentive that the first year their taxes went on 25%, whatever.
Yeah.
There's more people that are willing to develop or build a house. And what we're arguing for land acquisition is to give us back these building lots, then give an incentive maybe to build them.
Well,
The
I
reason that I was drawn to this was, where else except right here in the New York City watershed are we blessed with the ability to pay $35,000 for a hole in the ground to store food?
Right, exactly.
And, when people see that kind of is a, sticker shock that
Absolutely. And that's, if we learned nothing from trying to do housing in Sydney, it's that one of the biggest costs to a developer is the upfront cost for sewer and water extension, which is why the village was doing it themselves to incentivize it to a developer to hold those lots for sale so that somebody could build a house on them. That infrastructure is the largest cost upfront that has to be rolled into any kind of development.
And I was just looking at some way to help offset the cost of that punishing investment.
Right.
and encourage people to say, hey, come here and go here and
And I think it would be great if there would be a way, if you had that incentivized zoning, where you could couple it with basically a pilot program to incentivize a developer to do that upfront cost of site development. So you have ready lots for someone to get a bank loan and build a house.
Mhm.
It makes building that house so much cheaper.
Absolutely.
Municipal sewer and water is the key to any kind of housing
Well,
project.
I just, so you think that it's possible to do that?
Absolutely.
Where they have zoning and so.
The beauty of being a home rule state is that we can use our general municipal law to put whatever we need to make our zoning work for us.
Awesome.
And I look at zoning not as a deterrent to development, but as a way to actually encourage and guide development. And if this is another way to use the zoning to actually guide and encourage that growth and development, I'm all for it.
Well, and I think a community could say, okay, we've got 50 acres of land on the edge of our community. We want to encourage people to grow in there. So we're going to offer this tax incentive to build houses in that 50 acres.
And if we had had that in Sydney, Plankenhorn may not have fallen apart.
Right.
And Plankenhorn, I don't know if you ever saw the plans for that, even if it was never fully built out,
Yeah.
that met multiple points of housing needs. It wasn't just about one type of single family home, it was about small senior cottage homes with low maintenance. It was about multifamily housing, which every community needs all of those things. So the county planning board is embarking on a countywide housing study right now. We got a $50,000 grant from the state. And I've talked to the O'Connor Foundation about applying to them for a little bit more money. We have, we're trying to get it set up so that we can hire a consultant that's gonna analyze the needs of housing throughout the county, the types of housing that are needed, the existing housing inventory, which I have Spencer working on now. So Spencer, and I can share these with Glenn, Spencer is creating maps right now where he's doing an analysis of all of the parcels that are owned by single-family residents that have local addresses and single-family homes that have non-local addresses. So we can kind of see how many local versus second homes, basically. And he's also doing it for acreage. And what we're finding is that there's a slight edge in a lot of our watershed towns for developed residential lots owned by locals, but there's a huge edge for acreage owned by non-residents. So a lot of our acreage is actually owned by people that don't live here.
Sure is.
And it's not just New York City, this is private land outside of New York City lands.
No question.
So part of that key is how do you convince that second homeowner that the 1,000 acres he owns and a portion of it would be ideal for a housing development, and maybe they're the developer that wants to do it too.
So I'll get together with Dan
Okay,
and we'll put some thoughts on paper.
Okay.
Other than that.
the last thing is the National Academy Report. So the National Academy Report, and I don't know how much of this you guys have been reported to you or not, but it was very favorable to what we had presented to them. And I know Jim and Glenn had worked with me quite a bit when we were reporting to and presenting to the National Academy about the fact that there is no threat of sprawl in Delaware County. Overdevelopment isn't gonna happen here. The vision for growth and development in Delaware County is really infill development, building outside of our villages and hamlets in a way that we can sustain ourselves, but we're not gonna see sprawl. And not just because of New York City regulations, but geography, lack of highways, lack of airports, there's a lot of reasons. Right down to the fact that local community comp plans in most of our communities say that one of their greatest assets is their rural characteristics. So they're not gonna encourage overdevelopment, they want sustainable development. That's what their own comp plans want. And we argued that part of the problem is New York City has put so much onus on water quality and nothing on community sustainability for the last 20 years, that we don't even have a benchmark for community sustainability. It's not really valued by any of the partners because they're so concentrated on water quality. The National Academy report basically came out and said we were right. The land acquisition program has not been effective at protecting water quality. The precision feed management program has been, the stream corridor management program has been, the wastewater and stormwater programs have been. They've got measurable water quality benefits. The land acquisition program, there's nothing measurable because that's about deterring future potential impacts that we argue don't exist just by the nature of where we are. And so the National Academy's recommendations basically were that the monies that are in there for land acquisition, which is one of the largest chunks of the FAD dollars, should be reallocated to programs that have a direct water quality impact, like the stream programs, the ag programs, septic and stormwater, and that the land acquisition program should be re-envisioned. So yesterday, our core group met. Bruce is on the core group as well. The core group met yesterday, and we have a meeting December 8th to start talking to the city about the National Academy report and the next FAD. So the next FAD actually doesn't come out for another 5 years, but in 2025, we have to negotiate the new water supply permit. The land acquisition program is actually in the water supply permit. So we have till 2025 to really come up with a brand new envisioned land acquisition program. And we're basically presenting to them, let's throw out what we have, crumble it up, toss it out, we're gonna create a new one. And this one is going to be about non-acquisition. It's going to be about leasing streamside properties. They have this stream acquisition program that they've been piloting since 2007 in Schoharie County. They've had 23 properties participate since 2007. I wouldn't call it a stellar success. The biggest challenges with the SAP program are that they have no mechanism to subdivide away the streamside parcels and leave the upland pieces for development. So they end up buying a whole parcel. The other challenge they have is there's no mechanism to determine what fair market value for this type of purchase is. So there's a lot of argument and debate over the value of this land between property owners. They've paid as much as $20,000 an acre for some of these streamside parcels, which in my mind is ridiculous. They're undevelopable to begin with. So our concept is, and the other problem is the properties they want to target are in Hamilton villages. And we've always said that if you're going to buy streamside properties in Hamilton villages, then you better be prepared for a community to say, if that open space is running along there and we're not responsible because there's third-party ownership to the municipalities, we're going to want to use this as an economic driver. So let's put in a river walk or let's put in a boat launch. But if you own that house, do you really want a river walk behind your house in your backyard? So where's the incentive to property owners being involved? So the concept we came up with is more like the CREP program, where they actually pay a 10 or a 15-year lease. That it's not an easement, so it's not permanent. It's actually a lease where you kind of tie up that protective strip so that they aren't mowing all the way to the edge. They're not cutting down the trees. They're not storing their old tires and their lumber back there. It puts restrictions on things, but it keeps it in that property owner's ownership and control. So you don't have somebody putting a river walk behind your house. So there's an incentive to participating, but it also allows it to be changed or altered so that the guy who's selling his house, if he sells it to you tomorrow and you say, I don't want it, well, it's up in 2 years. You just don't sign up again. They founded the CREP program, which works on that basis. They have anywhere from a 90 to a 95% re-up rate, because once people are used to not using that portion of their property and it becomes sort of just that nice space on their property, they kind of like that incentivized check to pay their taxes every year. So the idea would be is that they get enough money to basically cover their town or their village taxes through that lease. So that's the incentive of them to continuing to participate long term. But it also gives us the ability, streams move, watershed areas move, it gives us the ability then to alter that each time it comes up for renewal. So maybe it becomes a smaller space or bigger space depending on where the stream moved to. It also then limits the amount of land actually owned and stewarded by New York City. It keeps local control over it. So we're actually going to present, we presented them with this concept a few years ago. They told us wait till the National Academy report comes out. The environmental groups are absolutely opposed to it. They want the large land acquisition. They like the open space program that it's become. We're going to fight against the open space program, and we are presenting them a whole new program to consider, throwing out the entire land acquisition program. The nice thing about the National Academy report is basically that report supports that concept. It supports the concept of reducing the land acquisition program to basically being water quality proven. You can't prove water quality protection on a plateau at the top of the mountain. You can on a stream side. So this gives us legs with the National Academy report to kind of get to the regulators. If we can get the regulators on board, the city won't have any argument because DEP and DOH will force it, or DEC and DOH will force it. So we're going to try and force their hand. So Kevin Young is working on the draft language to start putting the program together based on the research we did before. We're working, all the various departments on core group, which is basically all of our technical partners, are sending sort of a wish list of things that they want the money to be reallocated to. So enhancing precision peak management and monitoring, economic and social economic monitoring is one of the things we're going to ask for them to put money into. That's a program that doesn't currently exist that should. It was recommended by the National Academy that there should be an analysis of the baseline of socioeconomic impacts today, and that baseline should then be used to monitor and set up economic as well as social program funding that would encourage sustainability locally. I'm thinking it could really enhance the CWC's business development program funds so that we could actually use that for the pipeline in Delhi or another pipeline elsewhere if needed to build a housing or a business project. That those become essential projects. And the National Academy is recommending that that is exactly what we do. We take that land acquisition money and re-envision it and refocus it to these other programs, and that this time around we should be concentrating on economic and social sustainability. So we're in a very good spot. Evan's been part of those conversations, so you've also been working on with Spencer a swap analysis to see which lands we could actually buy back. They're not good for water quality, so let's just buy them back, put them back on the tax rolls. The easement is going to be the issue for us there, is how do we negate the easement on the property? But Kevin thinks we can do that. So we're really just engaged with all the partners right now to put something very robust and bold in front of them on the 8th. We sent a letter to the National Academy, Tina, as the chairman of the board, thanking them for their input and encouraging them to come and do a presentation here in Delaware County about the findings of their report. So if that happens, we'll certainly invite the IDA to that meeting, because I think it would be interesting for you to hear from the actual writers of the report as to why they put the recommendations in that they did. But it was basically 100% favorable to the upstate sustainability programs. So we did our job, Jim.
You did. Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions for Shelley?
Sure.
Well, I appreciate your time, I really do.
Anytime.
Sorry,
I was just saying thank you, yeah.
sorry, so long, but
It's Friday.
it's been one of those Fridays.
It's been all good news.
Hey,
Hey,
this is all good stuff.
Yeah, it is, we're getting there. Well, thank
We
you.
will get there.
Thank you so much.
Anytime, not a problem. If any of you need anything, just give us a holler. Reach me at the office. Sean's always around. You can get a hold of me.
Sounds good.
There you go.
And is it working out well to have Sean here? Or is there
Absolutely.
anything else you need from us?
Everything's fine, and Sean's very helpful, he gets us a lot of information we need.
Well, and that's what we're here for. I mean, I think the two programs can work nicely hand in hand. As long as we're working together, I think we can
No question,
solve some of these problems.
no question.
But for the Delhi pipeline, I do think CWC could be your source.
That's a great thought. I like that. I don't see problems, I see opportunities.
Well, and I think that's how we have to envision all of these things. We gotta get past the sore feelings and go on to the positive. How do we make this work for us?
Mhm.
And I think that's what we're gonna do
Yeah.
moving forward.
Great. Well, thank you.
Not a problem, anytime.
Thank you, Shelley.
Okey-doke.
Okay, Shelley, thanks for.
Sure.
yeah, thanks for coming.
And I'll be in touch, because we'll be tearing down houses hopefully. Once the first of the year especially comes along, I'm thinking we're probably gonna be getting 30 to 40 down right away.
Thank you.
I just gotta get through SHPO.
Good luck.
Good, thanks,
No problem.
appreciate your time.
Anytime.
Okay, want to take a couple minute break, or we good to just keep on moving? Well,
I want to keep on moving.
keep on moving. Okay. Treasurer's report, anything we need to discuss on that one?
Okay, just quick on the treasurer's report. So the pump station, luckily before last Friday, Saputo and Friesland did pay up, so that's fine. The village approved the 50,000 on Monday. So,
Oh, they did?
yes,
That's good.
so that's there. Just, understanding that, now this lumps in some of the pipeline breaks in there. And this is just something about moving, how we move forward there. We lost $60,000 on that project, between extra costs involved and the pipeline breaks and some other things that were deemed our responsibility. So we lost 60,000 on that last year. We're gonna lose another 50,000 this year
So
with
this,
these bills.
this 50 is just reimbursing us.
This
for-
is reimbursing us
Okay.
for a portion of the cost. So totally, that project was about 620. We're getting reimbursed about 560.
Okay.
Now, that's with me throwing in everything that's related. That counts the transformer we bought back in 2014. That counts, you know, the clean out that we had
Doesn't count
installed.
your time at all, though.
No,
Yes,
no.
you're
My
volunteering.
time is worthless.
Volunteer. You're volunteer.
Okay, also under that, just because it kind of relates to the loan, well, it doesn't relate to the loan report, but, the 8 Winkler Road NYSEG bills. We are still currently on just one system serving that whole facility. We've been billing according to that since 2018-ish, end of 18. This summer, it came about, Huff started complaining. There seems to be a real discrepancy in terms of who's being charged what under that program. We're gonna look at that. Evan's gonna be contacting electrician, either Westcott or Taggart, you know, someone who knows facilities a little larger scale, to see what can be done to get a more accurate reading of exactly what circuits are going to which portion of the building, and or cost of separating the services. I mention that solely because our leases on that facility, well, except for Braun, but our lease with Gravity Ciders and Huff ran out the end of this summer. And because of this issue, we haven't renewed them. And so, I mean, everybody's basically on board and they all want to renew. But so we're not going to that till we get this electricity issue worked out, because there's language related to that in the lease. So just to be aware that there's something going on there.
At one point, you were talking about having Huff go into a building right across the street.
Yeah, so I had a conversation with John Huff. We own a vacant piece of property right across the street. You know, and we offered it to them at a substantial discount price if they wanted to move forward and build the warehouse that they need. He's very interested in that, but with COVID, he's like, I'm at least 2 years out before I can consider something like that.
Okay.
So for now, and that's probably what the extension is gonna be, is a 2-year extension, because Gravity Cider wants the full building, so. You know, it's actually a good problem to have there, but, so we're working that out. Let's see, treasurer's report on the LDC side. I don't have my hard copy with my notes on it. Oh yeah, here I do.
So 808 is past due for 3 payments.
Okay,
and
so
that's a-
now we're
that's
getting
a
onto
food
that.
truck,
Yes.
and you want Evan to try and get his food truck approved, but you're not helping that situation with this food truck.
Peg has promised that she would make a payment. She said we'd be caught up before the end of the year. Okay, so on, also on the IDA side, I think everything else is.
Is that the food
explained.
truck that's involved with the Hunger Games over in Ithaca?
No, 808, they basically do weddings
Oh, okay.
catering, and that's
Well,
why.
there was somebody
that's
we
what
we
they're-
could help with a food truck who was on
Oh,
the
wait.
committee.
Isn't 808 on a deferment?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
808 is on a deferment.
Oh.
They're
Okay.
deferred until April 1st. I checked with Evan on that and he reminded me that, yes, they were on the deferred list. They will resume on April 1st.
And is Carly back to working on Liz's hitching post?
She just got released yesterday from being quarantined for COVID. So I have 3 other issues that she's working on, so I haven't revisited hitching post with her
Yeah, but
yet.
she could have done all that work while she was.
Correct.
She could double her hourly rate. Oh,
Yeah, she's self-employed, so.
Okay, then on the LDC side, just wants to bring to your attention, Club 55, Delaware River Basin Stone, Engels Cabinet Shop, all paid just this week. Evan reached out to Leather Stocking Timber because that's a significant balance. It's 3 months. Basically what it comes down to is what I expected the answer would be, is they got a new accountant in, and because of the deferment over COVID, it was never re-picked up, and that they will address it immediately.
I would expect that to be accurate.
Yeah. Let's see, PKE, Evans reached out to, hasn't heard back from. The only other ones that are, late otherwise are Masterson, and he has been paying late. Osmanli, they typically pay this week, and Scotch Valley Hemp. And so we're watching them, but we're not worried about them.
So has Masterson been a little slow?
He's doing fine, but with his big debt service requirements from the new project, he's just a little thin.
Okay.
Yeah. And then just as an FYI, because our loan funds are getting down there, I didn't add it up specifically, but just to give you a sense, we get about $38,000 a month in repayments under the LDC and about 18 under the IDA. That's it, unless there's questions.
Okay, any questions? All right, we read a motion to accept the financial reports. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We got enough of the Delhi pump station.
Okay, so, pump station is what it is. Delhi Rehabilitation and Nursing, they made their payments in October and November as they're supposed to. It's signed locally. We are waiting for their version of the signed agreement to come back. That's in Joe Scott's hands. He finally got back to me during the meeting and said he will be following up with them. And I know he will because he hasn't gotten paid for his work on that. And they're paying for it. So he will jump right on that one. Hidden in, so the county is not doing tax foreclosures. So we're back on the deal of purchasing it for $50,000.
Okay.
And now in addition to that, we will have to settle up on taxes, which are right around 36,000. The business, the person, entity, business, whatever, that we would be leasing to for up to a year and then selling to is fine with that amount. Finally, we've got Jenkins nailed down, or at least that's what's reported to me. And Carly is actually gonna be the one writing all the documents for the transfers. Is our local attorney. She'll be doing all that, and she said she would have drafts to me by today.
Oh, nice.
So the goal is to get Francis's signature by next week.
What was your problem with the Mitchell, the lawyer?
He's just a moron. He doesn't know what's necessary to transfer property in New York State.
Oh,
He's a real estate attorney out of New Jersey, doesn't know what's necessary to transfer property in the neighboring state.
That's why you lent
Yeah.
that guy money.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
just remind you, Glenn, you're being recorded.
I know, that's okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Is he got a
He's
license?
not watching.
Has he got a license for New York State?
I don't know, but that's why Carly's taking care of all the documents. Sheffield Estates, just because we're late, I'm gonna give a very brief one. Jim's working with Allison Phillips of Young Summer on clearing up the homeowner association. And he's got a date with one of the residents down there where he's gonna smooth everything over.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, McDonald's for the boundary line adjustment, I just got that, a draft version of the new survey yesterday afternoon. I reviewed it this morning, I okayed it. They gotta get me the finals. With the way that turns out, it'll probably, and I got the application today from Sheena. Will be on the January agenda for the boundary line adjustment for that. Then once we get through that, then we can get Carly amped up about going off of getting rid of that maintenance agreement. let's see, the sale to Daryl Merwin's Garage from the parcel of the IDA, that will close probably the week after Thanksgiving. Again, that was held up with, Carly is his attorney also, that was held up with her quarantine. This isn't really an update, but I'll bring it up now. Because it's important and so I don't forget it. Okay, so we were requested, we have a pilot agreement with Clark Companies for their project, which included the new manufacturing facility, and it also included an $8,000 renovation to the office building that's connected to the main complex. They've requested to split that pilot into two because the ownership of the new manufacturing facility is switching from Clark Companies to Clark Brothers Real Estate Company as part of that whole transition of that business. We are being asked, so let's see, that's the pilot agreement we had with them. That was of May of 2019. They're asking to split it into two and allowing Clark Companies to transfer the manufacturing project into Clark Brothers Real Estate LLC. That portion of things, that transaction is purely administrative or ministerial, I think is the right word. So it's a type 2 action under seeker. And also it is not going to provide any extra benefit to the companies in terms of tax savings or anything like that. So we don't need a hearing. And so I have a formal 15-page resolution that says all that, if you guys want to review it. But that would be a resolution I would ask.
George wants to read it.
No, I don't want to. Let's just agree.
I'll move it.
Move it.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
There we go.
Is the $8,000 improvement to the office a putting green?
No, 8,000 square feet.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
That's a big green.
No, it was actually 2 floors of office space.
I have to tell you something about Scotty. We're going to a Giants game. And we're in the parking lot, and everybody's talking, and he says, listen, George, you gotta really behave today because my accountant's coming to join us at the game. So all this I'm watching, and here comes this guy. He's got Dunkin' Donut box in his hand. He's throwing donuts all over the goddamn place. I said, Scotty, is that your accountant? Yeah, it is. I said, watch it, he's gonna hit you with a donut. He's throwing donuts and good. I gotta be nice to this fellow, this very serious accountant.
There you
All right, so that's all I had under updates.
Good, thank you, Glenn. Evan.
Okay.
Going to do Linda Jones.
Yeah, is this executive session?
Yes.
I forget.
Yeah, I think so. It is.
Call the particular person.
Yeah, we've got 2 in a row, so might as well go into it.
Go to executive session.
I'll make the motion, we go in.
Second. Thank you. Okay, we're back from executive session and we have a motion to approve a loan to Linda Jones and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we need a motion for Verdugo hospitality loan.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Any other old or new business for the IDA? We beat this puppy about enough. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a move to adjourn.
And I will.
Going out on a limb.
We'll immediately open the LDC meeting, and I need a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And a motion to approve the financial reports.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Glenn, you or Evan, I'm not sure which EDA update.
Sure. Still no word, but they did ask us, I forget if, this was since the last meeting, but they asked us for more information, so we have 2 extra requests for information, and this time it was basically, they want information about our ability to lend this. And Glenn put numbers together about, the amount that we, it was,
What our
default rate.
portfolio is, our
Yeah.
default rate, things of that nature.
Right.
Just to show that we are capable of managing a fund of this size.
And they all look good, so, hopefully that'll be good, but still no word.
What's the total amount we're looking for?
2 million, and then we're matching 200,000, so it'd be a 2.2 million RLF covering 5 counties.
Great, thank you. Lending priorities, Glenn put that in there. He and I have had some discussion. I think I prefer to push this back to the next meeting just because of the time.
Yeah, but just to, as a teaser, so for next time.
No more restaurants.
That's exactly what I'm looking for. If we get this EDA money, that's mostly focused on COVID-related stuff, which is fine. Every business will say they've been impacted by COVID because they have. That's fine. If we don't get it, we're nearing the bottom of our cupboard. Moving forward, I just want some guidelines of, look, until we get some more money, or even if we get this EDA money, I have no idea how quick it'll come. Munchen basically said he doesn't want, he wants no more of this money going out. So I don't know what's gonna happen with that. So allocating it in the future. Do we want to have some, drop deads? Look, we're not doing anything that is service, or we're focusing on this or that or anything like that.
Instead of redlining any particular business, I think we put in some financial criteria of the borrowers. Because every business can have a very good operator. So we shouldn't preclude and say, no businesses of this type. Because you could come in with somebody who's got 80% down in cash and just needs a little bit more. That's a highly preferable borrower to somebody who's got no money down and is, Mike said, I have a dream plan. So I think it's more on a financial capacity and collateral than it is in industry.
Well, I'd like to spend some time next week.
Yeah, or if we loan amounts, if we want to narrow that down, or, yeah.
Yeah, but I think our goal there is to help businesses that can't get a regular financing, through a bank.
I agree with that totally, but what percentage of ours is in the food industry?
Well, I agree with that. I'm just saying,
We're
That's a
high
good
risk.
point, and maybe you guys can do that, is take our total portfolio and go, we got 80 deals, and 30 of them are in the food service and 10 of them are in this kind of a deal, and then do it by dollars as well as by numbers.
Yeah, we'll put something like that together. We did with EDA, but we'll break it down by
Right,
industry.
so that we know that we've got a dollar exposure and a percentage exposure in certain industries.
Mhm.
Concentration report.
And that gives us an opportunity to work towards the other field to find businesses that need them in other fields.
I was talking to Lillian and Ray before, too much detail here, but at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm awake going through Amazon Prime. And this movie pops up called Land of Little Rivers, which turns out to be Delaware County, and nobody even knows some guy made this film. It's the history of this 30-mile circle in the Catskills that includes all these little trout streams. Hancock's in it, Deposit's in it, Roscoe's in it. They're all in it. And it's a fabulous film. It's hysterical. I mean, if they cleaned it up and got rid of the F-bombs that are in it, we could probably use it for tourism. But who's in there? Jeff Skelding's in there from Foodar. Ben Rinker's in there. The guy lives down the road from me, and he's a fishing guide, but he thought he was a hemp farmer 2 years ago. I mean, all these characters are in there. Rob Lewis from Deposit. And it hits me while I'm going through this. I actually went back and watched the stupid thing again, and I recommend it to all of you to watch it. Rinker has bought 3 different properties on Peace 80 Road. An older lady passes away. Rinker buys this thing, fixes it up, and now there's people going in and out of there that are his fly fishing clients. Lewis owns a resort, smaller issue kind of thing, in Deposit on the tailwater of the West Branch of the Delaware. These guys are actually charging large bucks to go float in the river in their boat, and they're not asking us for a dime. So there's something very successful going on in these little towns, and it's not the typical bar restaurant operation. And I don't think, I for one, never even looked at them, because I don't fish, so it don't matter to me. But it's very, very interesting. I recommend the film to you to take a look at it. There's other industries going on around us that we're not really even touching on in a lot of this stuff.
Good to know.
Well, it's all good stuff, and let's spend part of our next meeting and really get into that. I think it's important this week go on into January 1st. And the last, under older new business, what I wanted to mention also for next month is, this is a surprise to me. I have been talking to Ray Pucci about coming up with some kind of a marketing plan to reach out to the new, I hesitate to call them second homeowners because now they're primary homeowners. But the new residents that have come into the county as a result of COVID. And that's not going to stop. I mean, there's just an incredible run on real estate right now. And most attorneys have got 100 closings on their desk to deal with.
They just canceled 2 of the compulsory meetings, for the state meetings for the realtors and the appraisers. Couldn't get anybody to go because they're so busy making money.
So, isn't that a shame? So, I would like to, I'm going to email a proposal that he put together for us to take a look at. There's a budget in there. He's not looking for us to come in for the full budget. The budget's just for information. So read it over at your leisure, and then we can talk about it when we get together this summer. Anything else, old or new business? I really apologize for the length of this today.
Yeah, I want to thank Evan for coming to our board meeting last month and giving us an update on the procedure with the IDA is using to approve some of the loans. It was very helpful. Thank you for coming over.
Thanks, Andy. I'll always go in front of your board and say nice things.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, thank you.